welcome to the Sustainable Travel Podcast. I'm Emma, your host from That Travel. The Sustainable Travel Podcast aims to interview a range of travelers from different backgrounds and see what sustainable travel means to them because it can mean all kinds of things. So today we are here with Lizet from A Wonder Food World, and Lizet is a train expert. She knows everything there is to know about train travel. So Lizet, hi.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's so nice to have you with us. I was just saying before we started recording that you and I have actually come really close to meeting each other twice now,
Yes.
and it's never come off. The first time was in London,
Um,
second time in Germany. So one day it will happen.
yes, it will happen. It will happen.
So Lizette, can you start us off? Can you tell us what it is that you do? How did you get into sustainable travel? And just tell us a little bit more about who you are.
Yes. So I travel by train mostly. I have my own sustainable travel blog. So I go on my own sustainable travel adventures to write on the blog, basically. I don't really remember how I got into train travel. It just kind of formed that way. I don't have a driver's license, so I'm kind of dependent on trains in general. So yeah, I have to, unless I'm traveling with friends. So slowly on, I just started traveling a little bit more. And now I've been traveling Europe by train for the last 2.5 years.
Hmm. That's so cool. And is it always train travel? Do you do any flights at all, or all just by train?
No, I do take planes. If I can't avoid it, I do. I travel around doing cat sits all over Europe. So
Love
sometimes I
that.
need to be at a cat sit place, and then I only have like last year I only had about 3 days, 4 days to go from Turkey to the south of France. That's a very long journey with trains. So that would take you easily a week. So that
Yeah.
was just not possible. So then I take a plane. But because I have my own business, I have time. That's the one luxury that I have.
Yeah.
So usually I try to take trains wherever possible. But yeah, it sometimes happens that I need to be somewhere and I would just take a plane. And also, I would love to take a train journey to Asia because you can actually travel from Europe to Thailand
Yes.
overland, which is super cool. But I would also just fly. I mean, it makes sense. So I would do that once and then
Yeah.
probably the next time I would just fly.
That Silk Road train, I think, I mean, I'm just saying this now, but I think it's on my list, like of things that I have to do before I die. It looks incredible.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was gonna ask, like, you're a sustainable traveler yourself, I would say. Like, I know you have the sustainable travel blog. I always like to ask people, what does like sustainable travel, the phrase, what does it mean to you?
For me, sustainable is the word that I chose that kind of covers everything. So you have all the different words, you have eco travel, green travel, sustainable travel, responsible tourism, conscious travel. I tried to write a blog about like what all the different words mean. And they are a bit different, but for me, sustainable travel is basically what covers all of it. So it's being good to nature, so trying to lower your footprint and not damage nature. So that also includes like not leaving trash, using sunscreen that's reef proof, those kind of things. But it's also responsible tourism. So for me, it's like all of it together, but also everything separately. So I would never tell a person that you can't ever fly again because it's ridiculous. And I think there's also a lot of value in exploring different cultures, and especially if you go to different continents, the culture is just so different. And I think for the world as a whole, we can really grow as a whole if we and understand each other a little bit more, and also just kind of take things from different cultures that are, yeah, the beautiful things, the things that you're like, oh, that's really cool that you look at things this way. Like for example, in the West, we are quite rushed. So we're always busy, we're always working. And then you have other countries where they are just like, no, I'm just taking a 2 hour lunch break, those kind of things. And if you're like, oh, yeah, I feel like my life is so rushed, maybe I should implement those kind of things to have a more relaxed vibe. So I think travel on its own is very valuable and an educational moment, just by traveling and just by engaging with people. So then it comes down to responsible tourism, to just go to local communities, stay at a homestay, do a tour with a local guide instead of an expat who is just trying to make some extra money, those kind of things. So yeah, so sustainable travel for me is all of those things, taking trains, but also your impact on local communities and
Yeah.
yeah, on the world as a whole.
I feel like I mean, like that was a very like long answer and very detailed. And I think you summed up a lot of my thoughts as well. And I just want to say it's so funny that you said you tried to write a blog where you break them all down because same. And I think it ended up being nearly like 6,000 words. And then I was like, this
It's
is too many words.
impossible. Yeah.
It's
I
just,
think I have something up about it, but at some point I just kind of gave up. So I think I took sustainable travel and then responsible tourism. And then I just kind of combined eco and green
yeah.
as one. And then I was like, yeah, that's it. That's just what I'm gonna post. It's not gonna get better from here.
That's why I made a podcast. I was like, I can't sum this up. I need like
Yeah.
multiple people to talk to.
Like hours and hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, but you do travel a lot by train. So could you tell us like roughly how much? I mean, I know you said you travel a lot in Europe, but what sort of journeys are you doing? And yeah, let's go. Let's start with that one.
Yes. So yeah, I do the cat sit. So usually I have a destination. So I'm just traveling to a destination, and sometimes that's very far, sometimes it's pretty close.
Hmm.
Sometimes I just plan a whole trip around it. So last year, for example, I had to be in the French Pyrenees for a cat sit, and then I did a whole circle around Italy.
Hmm.
So I took a night train from the Netherlands to Innsbruck, and then from there I started traveling Italy for about three and a half weeks, and then along the Côte d'Azur in France to the French Pyrenees. So kind of built my trip around that cat sit in the south of France. I was there last year as well, and then I did a whole trip around France. So I was like, I need to do something different now. So that's usually how I kind of plan my trips and like where do I need to be and where can I go.
Hmm.
Usually it's a journey like that. So I try to really just make it a train adventure. So
Yeah.
not just like, oh, I need to be in Vienna. So I'm just taking a night train to Vienna and then I spend a few days in Vienna and go back. Really try to make it a train adventure. And that the last 2 years, I did about 6 to 7 thousand kilometers in
Wow.
train travel. Yeah, so that's a lot. Yeah, so that's usually what I do, and then sometimes I just have a destination that I want to go to. So last year when we almost met in Germany, I was actually doing a trip to Budapest.
Hmm.
And instead of just taking, I think I could take like a night train to Vienna and then take a train to Budapest. So then it would be like 1.5 day.
Hmm.
But I just made an 11-day journey out of it with a few stops in Austria and one stop in Germany,
I
just
love that.
because.
You must have seen so much of Europe, but I mean, I'll
Yes.
come back to that. I briefly want to touch on the cat sitting. So obviously that like pet sitting has had a boom recently. It's been so popular. Is it, I just want to ask, is it trusted house sitters that you use?
No, I find everything on Facebook.
Wow. And
Yeah.
only cats, no dogs.
Only cats, yeah, because I have no experience with dogs, so I kind of don't trust myself with dogs because I wouldn't really know how to respond if they get scared or anything. So
Hmm.
yeah, for me it's just cats.
Right. And how did you get into that?
Kind of randomly. I was living in Prague and I was leaving and like I lost my job and then I had some freelance gig and then I decided I was going back to the Netherlands to start my business. And before I was leaving, I kind of wanted my own apartment because I was in a flat share and it was like a shady place because I couldn't afford more than that. So
Yeah.
I was like, before I go back, I kind of want to spend like a month or so in a nice apartment.
Hmm.
And then a friend of a friend reached out to me. She was like, I kind of want to go back to the US for a few weeks because it was this was 2021. So
Okay.
she hadn't been home for about 2 years and her sister was pregnant. And so she was like, I just want to go. But she had two cats and she had one kitten. So she was like, I can't really leave unless there's someone staying in my apartment to take care of my cats.
Yeah.
So then I stayed at her place for 6 weeks. And then
Oh.
from that moment on, I was kind of like, this might be something that I can do in the future. And then I didn't think about it for a really long time until about 6 months later, I was in Barcelona and I was supposed to have an apartment, but I kind of got scammed.
Mm.
So I didn't have a place to stay. And then I kind of randomly ran into a person. I think it was in an expat group on Facebook that this woman just reached out to me. She was like, Hey, I have cats. I'm going on a holiday. I need a sitter. Do you want to do this? Because then you
Wow.
have a place to stay. And I was like, Oh, yeah, I've done this before. This is amazing. So then I actually did three to cover my time in Barcelona.
Hmm.
And from that moment on, I just started finding the groups and
Oh.
just, yeah, putting messages up like, hey, this is me and I want to do this. And then I started doing it all over Europe.
Wow, I didn't even know that you could do that on Facebook. That's really cool. And what a
Yeah,
coincidence that she reached out to you and you'd done it before.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, because otherwise, probably I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Amazing. Well, it's a great way to plan your trips. It's like, where am I? Where do I need to be? Let's figure out
yeah.
how to get there overland. And at the moment, I guess it's mainly in Europe, but have you done trains outside of Europe? And would you? I think you said you'd do the Asia train.
I haven't. Well, I we did take trains in Morocco,
Hmm.
and we were supposed to take a train in Indonesia, but
Hmm.
my sister got dengue, so then we were stuck,
Oh,
and we had a wedding to get to, so then we had to fly. So that was a shame. So I really want to go back to Indonesia and take trains. They have
yeah.
a new train, a super fast train. I want to take that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, so far it's only been Morocco, but I definitely have a ton on my list. Like they have trains in Canada going to Banff area and Alaska and Argentina. And I'm actually working on a collaborative article with other writers.
Hmm.
Um, and they are writing about all the trains that they took in all the other continents. So there are going to be a few articles and there were like 35 people that responded like, "Oh, I took this really cool train from here to there. I can write about that." So
Yeah.
it's actually people very often say that outside of Europe you can't train travel, and that's
Hmm.
just not true.
Yeah.
Like I think in a lot of countries there might be this one connection or something. So yeah, in a lot of countries you can't really do a road trip by train. But still, you can combine it with buses in most
Yeah.
places. And most countries do have at least one train connection. And usually those are like the scenic ones, the ones with the open windows that you can kind of hang out
Yeah.
and just driving through the mountains. And they're amazing. So, yeah, I definitely want to take more because my experience in Morocco was amazing. I think that's actually maybe a little bit where my love for trains grew a little bit
Mm.
because we took this train, which was for most people just a commuter train.
Hmm.
So I think it was from Marrakesh to Rabat, so two big cities.
Hmm.
And we took the morning train, so we were on the train at 7 a.m. and people were just going to work. And everyone was just having chats with the local people. And they have this in Morocco, they always share their food, which
Hmm.
is like you can't not share your food because that's rude. So I remember that I just woke up because it was 7 a.m. and I was taking a nap before that. And then there was this guy sitting in front of me and he had this little cardboard milk box
Hmm.
and he offered me a sip. And I was like, that's disgusting. No, thank you.
No.
So I kind of responded in a bad way, and I still feel bad about that. But yeah, for them that's super normal. Like it would have been rude for him not to offer it, and
Yeah.
might have been a little bit rude for me to say no. But I also don't like milk, so
Yeah. Well,
I wasn't gonna
you
drink it
learn as you
anyway. But yeah, so but yeah, that was so cool to just sit among the locals and just have a peek into their daily lives, you know?
yeah.
And I think that's for a very big, except if you have those scenic trains, you know, those are mostly for tourists.
Yeah.
So the locals will take other trains, but then you have the scenes, so then they're worth it for the scenes. But if you just take normal trains that the local people take as well, it's just this super easy glimpse into daily life, and I love that.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I mean, I've taken trains in Morocco too, and I agree they're really nice. Like it's just a lovely atmosphere.
Yes.
Although I do remember the one that I took being stiflingly hot, and I was like, oh my God, I
Oh,
need to get off this train. But it's beautiful, and the landscape is amazing. And you're so right. I do find people often say like, well, outside of Europe, it's not a thing. And I will admit that I took a look at a train map once of the US and how many trains they have compared to
yeah.
Europe. And I did think at that moment, yeah, they've got a point, they have got a
Yeah.
point. But I really think people should try trains outside of Europe. Like there's so much to see, and often the trains are very scenic, even if they're not necessarily intended to be a scenic train. The scenery that you see is gorgeous. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, so I definitely have to agree with you there. So the next thing I wanted to ask you was, what is the longest train trip you've ever done? Because I think you said 6,000 miles overland. So obviously some of those must have been like long, long train trips.
Um, again, depends. Do you mean like in one go or like the entire train adventure?
You tell me, both and.
Okay. I think they might actually be the same trip. I think the longest is like a night train
Okay,
because I usually try to stick to a maximum of 8 hours in one day.
okay. Is there
Preferably
a
one.
reason for that?
Yes, multiple. I try to take like connections that I don't have to transfer too much.
Hmm.
So if it's 8 hours, it kind of feels like a working day, and usually I work on the trains.
Hmm.
So yes, therefore 8 hours. But also because I always kind of keep in mind that you might have delays, and if you add 2 hours, you're at 10 hours,
Hmm.
which is a long time. Plus, I don't really get up at 7 a.m. to take a train at 8. So I usually take a train around 10 a.m.
Hmm.
ish. So then if you add 8 hours, it's 6 p.m., which is a nice time. Then you arrive in your new destination before dinner. So you can just drop off your stuff and walk around, find a nice place to have dinner.
Hmm.
But then if you have like a 2 hour delay, it's going to be 8 p.m. So it's
Yeah,
still not too late. I am a solo traveling female, so I do need to kind of keep in mind that I don't want to arrive after midnight.
yeah,
So that's why I try to stick with 8 hours. Probably if I would go to Asia, for example, I would probably take a max of 6 hours
yeah.
because you have more delays. So here it's pretty reliable. So you can count on the 8 hours to actually be 8 hours, maybe 8.5. But yeah, I do always keep in mind like a 2 hour delay.
Hmm. I have to
Uh,
say for our German listeners, except Deutsche Bahn, which are always delayed.
I haven't had any issues with Deutsche Bahn. And I
You're
always
lucky.
travel to Germany because I'm from the Netherlands. So
Hmm.
wherever I have to go, if it's like east, I need to go through Germany and I never have delays. So
That's
knock on
lucky.
wood that it never happens. But yeah, everybody always keeps complaining about Deutsche Bahn. I haven't had any issues.
I was always
But
that person saying, I've never had a delay with Deutsche Bahn. Whenever I get and then I had the worst delay, and I was like, oh no.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I've been saying this for a while now, so I don't
Yeah.
know. You should just skip Deutsche Bahn for a while,
No.
just to be sure.
It is unavoidable. We had some experiences because we tried to go by bus in Mozambique. And all I can say, do not do that ever. Like it was the worst. And I ended up like therapeutically writing myself blog posts that I've since had to go back and edit and say, right, here's the actual information you need rather than me just complaining.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I
it's
do that
definitely good.
too. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah,
No,
I've
that.
had some blogs as well that I was just like, oh, I just had a terrible experience. So, for example, Barcelona, because I got scammed with that apartment.
Uh,
So, my whole Barcelona experience was just horrible. And
hmm
I didn't love the city, to be fair, I still don't. I
hmm
don't think I would have loved it more if I had a proper apartment. But yeah, I wrote this angry article, and I think it was my first blog ever. And I was just like, oh, I hated it, and blah, blah, don't move here. Like, it's fine for a weekend, but don't try to live here as a digital nomad. That's horrible. And then, like, a few months later, I was like, maybe I should rewrite it a little
Yeah.
bit.
Like the thing is, as bloggers, we might not love a place, but other people do. And but yeah,
Yeah,
we have to really make sure that we're giving useful information. That was a learning curve for me.
yeah.
So bearing that experience and all of your others in mind, what advice would you give people who are thinking, I'd love to travel more by train. I'd like to try this out. What can they do to get started and what should they bear in mind?
I think one of the things that you need to keep in mind is the fact that you have transfers
Hmm
and you have delays. Like you have delays with planes as well, of course, but with trains, I think it happens a little bit more often because it's less structured. So if
Yeah,
one train is delayed and another train is stuck behind it, then it's also delayed. You can't really do anything about that.
yeah.
So keep in mind those delays and just like plan ahead. Make sure that you have enough transfer time. In most apps from the local train operator, you can fill in that you want a transfer time of at least 15 minutes or something. So
hmm
especially if you're gonna be in big train stations like Rome or Paris, it's a lot.
Mm,
And if you're not used to train travel, then it can be so overwhelming.
yeah.
Plus, it's sometimes it's not in English, so you need to just kind of figure it out in the local language, and then you might have to ask someone, and then they might
hmm
not be willing to help you because they're in a rush as well. So it's just you need to figure it out. But in the end, I think we all had to figure out airplanes as well
hmm
and airports. Airports can be big and confusing as well. So I think the best thing is to just start
Yeah,
and just kind of accept the fact that it's a new thing and that you will figure it out.
yeah.
It's not that complicated, but you just need to do it, and then it will get easier. For some people, it doesn't. I mean, I know people that still always get lost at train stations. I have a friend, she hates trains.
Yeah.
She always takes buses because it's easier for her to find the fixed bus
Yeah.
than it is to find a train.
Mm.
So that's fine. I was traveling with her a little bit in Italy and I was just guiding her through it. Like I was on my train and she hopped on another one from a different direction. And she was just like, I can't find it. And she was sending me photos
Yeah.
and I was just guiding her through it. She was like, no, next time I'm just taking a bus again. And that's also
That's
fine. I
fair.
mean, it's not for everybody.
Mm.
But you need to try it to figure out if it's your form of transport. And I think the most
Yeah.
important thing is also to just enjoy it. I
Yeah.
love trains for the fact that they are slow
Yeah.
and you're just slowly rolling into your new destination. So you're just leaving maybe the place that you're starting from, like your home country, that might be a little bit boring. And it's just slowly changing into the place that you're going to. For me, that's coming from a flat country. I get to see more and more hills until I'm somewhere in the mountains, and that's amazing. And it's just,
Yeah.
I love that a lot more than just hopping on a plane and then getting off in a new destination. And you're kind of like, oh yeah, I'm at this new destination, but
Mhm.
what did I pass? You
Yeah.
don't really see anything. It's usually just clouds. So,
Yeah. I
uh,
love that answer. And I think like it's so important. Just do it. Just try have a bit of adventurous spirit. Like for me, I get lost a
exactly.
lot. but that means I leave time if I have a connection. And then I was going to ask you, because we've touched on it a few times, but it's not kind of been an exact answer. How do you find the train journeys that you do? Do you have a few different ways, or is it just one thing?
I think I do have a structure. So yeah, I usually start with a destination and then I just kind of look at Google Maps and see what I have like in the area. I have so many pins on Google Maps that you can't even see the countries anymore. So I always have something, and I'm like, oh, I want to go there, and I want to go there, and then I can do it like this. And so yeah, starting from wherever I am at that point, and then just kind of figuring it out. And then I usually use Rome to Rio a
Hmm.
lot to figure out how long a journey is.
Hmm.
And then that usually says like, okay, you can take this journey and transfer here and there and there.
Hmm.
And then I start to look around those places. Like, okay, do I want to go there? Because usually it's big cities and I prefer smaller places. So usually I check if I can stop in a smaller place around it. And if there's something that I want to see there, so can I stay there for 2 days or something? And then I just try to find things on the route
Hmm.
where I want to stop. And then depending on how much time I have, I plan these stops in between. Sometimes I just do a quick lunch somewhere
Yeah.
as a transfer station, and sometimes I just spend a few days at
Hmm.
one spot as a
Hmm.
transfer.
And you said Interrail. Do you use Interrail much or not really?
No,
Hmm.
no. So I used it for the first time in Italy, and honestly, I'm not really a fan.
Okay.
Wrote a very honest blog about that as well, which was a little bit more nuanced than the one about Barcelona.
Hmm.
But yeah, no, I don't know. I think for certain countries and certain journeys, it's worth it. But Italy is very cheap in
Hmm.
terms of train travel, so basically, it wasn't really worth the money.
Hmm.
Plus, it's not that easy to use. So I'm willing to pay a little bit more if it's super easy to use, but
Hmm.
it also wasn't super easy to use. So you
Yeah.
only have a certain amount of travel days. And so I had to figure out if it's going to be worth the money to use a travel day or that I could better just buy a normal ticket. So I was basically and checking the normal tickets and checking the interview.
Hmm.
So it's double the work.
Yeah.
And then like most journeys were 5 to 10 euros. And then you have a pass for I had a pass for 10 travel days, which
Yeah.
is 250 euros, I think. So that's basically everything below 25 euros isn't worth a travel day.
Hmm.
So then I was going to France after and actually used most of my days traveling back from France to the Netherlands because in France it's more expensive. And
Yeah.
I was taking one night train and then a Eurostar. So those kind
Mm.
of trains are worth it. And also my first journey was from the Netherlands to Innsbruck on a night train. So that's worth it as well. So it kind of depends on what type of trains you're taking and what kind of journey. So I usually slow travel. So I do a lot of short journeys and just literally just go to the next town and stay there for 2 days and then go to the next town and stay there for 2 days instead of doing these massive trips. But if you're planning to go from London to Sicily, it's going to be 2 travel days to get there. If you
Hmm.
just go like one direct route, and then it's 2 days to get back, and then you're on super expensive trains because you have to take the Eurostar to Brussels, then you have to or to Paris probably, and then you have to take a night train from Rome to Palermo. So those are expensive,
Yeah.
and it's just long journeys. So basically what it came down to for me in Italy, that only those 8-hour trains, the really long ones, those were worth the money. So if you're doing that, if you really want to go from A to B very fast,
Hmm.
and you might even have some super expensive trains included, then it's worth it. If you're
Yeah.
just traveling in one country and you're doing like these 1 2 hour journeys,
Probably
it's
not.
probably not worth it, but yeah,
Mm.
it's worth looking into. Like usually I do check like, oh, how expensive is this trip gonna be? Is it worth an interrail pass?
Hmm.
Usually the answer is no for me. but it depends on the kind of journey you're taking.
It's really interesting because I took an Interrail trip when I was about 2021. It was a long time ago. And I think the pass was the same price because I think I got the same one, which to me now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, that must have been not worth it at all. Because I was going,
That's weird because if you're like it's so worth it if you're young. So until
yeah,
27 you have like 30% discount compared to the normal passes.
maybe it was
So
less
then
then,
maybe
or maybe I
either
was,
mine was even more expensive,
yeah,
um, or yours must have been cheaper. But yeah,
or
if
I
you're
booked
below
the wrong one.
20, that's possible as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, if you're below 27, then it's usually worth it because then they're pretty cheap.
Hmm.
But above that, it's not worth it. Plus all the extra work basically that you have from it.
Yeah, super
Yeah.
interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I know that wasn't like part of the planned questions, but it's really interesting to read about.
Mhm.
What I'll do is probably, if you can send me the blog, I'll link it in the
Perfect.
description,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
then people can take a look. Um, and so just lastly, Lizette, then I just wanted to ask, what are you working on at the moment? I know you told us a little bit about that, but what are you working on, and where can people find you?
Yes, so my focus is the blog. I actually literally deleted Instagram this morning because I'm officially done with Instagram.
This is a shock.
Um, yeah, sorry. No, yeah, I haven't been a fan of Instagram for a really long time and I don't get a lot out of it, so I kind of gave up on the platform. I'm on pretty much every other platform though, except for TikTok. So I'm gonna do Pinterest a lot more. So I'll post all my blogs on Pinterest in the next few months. I do a lot more with LinkedIn. I have my sustainable people on LinkedIn, and I just love talking to people in the industry a lot more. And then I have my blog. So my blog is the focus, and then I have a newsletter for those who want to keep up to date to everything. So you can sign up for that. And then next to my blog, I started creating train travel guides.
Yes, love these.
So yeah, so I started with your normal typical travel guide, which included tips like the highlights and the restaurants and the hotels and everything. And but everybody kind of does that. So the only difference was for me that I focused on train travel, and then I was like, maybe I should just create those train travel guides because with trains you can literally go anywhere, and like with a plane you usually fly from big city to big city. Maybe there's a slightly smaller city that you can fly to, but your options are kind of limited, and
Hmm.
then you figure out what you're going to do around that city. But with trains you can literally go anywhere. You can go to these teeny tiny small towns, you can go to beaches, you can go to mountains, you can get everywhere. So it can be a bit overwhelming to decide where you want to go. I get that question a lot. How do you even decide where you want to go?
Hmm.
So I just started writing down the routes that I took that I really, really loved. So I'm selling those for only €5, so you can get those on my blog as well.
Amazing. And do you focus on why you love them and like the views, or is it just like a really practical guide for people to be able to use and carry out themselves?
I do an introduction story about this trip and why I loved it. And then it's
Yeah.
very practical. So it includes all the train information. So it has a link to where you can book it. It has
So
a
useful.
price based on low season and high season. So you have like this price range,
Hmm.
and the travel time from destinations. And then I have some tips at the end. Like if you want to spend a little bit more time for this trip, you can also add these and these and these places. If you want to cross the border to this country, then I can recommend these places. And then I just link blogs. So if I wrote blogs about the specific destinations on the trip, then you can just click on it and then you can get all the information about that specific stop. So the guide is very small and practical, but it does include a lot of extra information that
Yeah.
will help you plan the trip.
Yeah, it's like absolutely packed full of stuff that people can use in different areas. That's really
Yeah,
useful, I'm sure. And such an affordable price as well. So I'm sure you'll get loads of interest.
exactly. Yeah, it's like the price of a Starbucks coffee.
Yeah,
So
like probably less than that now.
yeah, probably.
Amazing. I absolutely love that, Lizette. I mean, you've been an absolute joy. What I'll do, I'll put all of the links where people can find you in both the description of the YouTube and the Spotify.
Perfect.
And I guess all that's left for me to say is thank you so much for being an amazing guest.
Thank you for having me, and I will see you in London.
Yes, we will see each other in London.